In this episode of Art Journal TV, I would like to introduce you to gouache. Hello, I'm Marieke Blokland from Bloknote.nl and I welcome you to Art Journal TV. In this episode of Art Journal TV, I would like to talk about gouache. I got a lot of questions about gouache, also known as poster paint, and in Dutch, the Netherlands where I come from, this is also known as plakkaatverf. And plakkaat is an old-fashioned word for poster, and verf means paint, so poster paint is what it's called in English as well. The reason why it's called poster paint or plakkaatverf is because designers, hence the name on these little tubes, designer's gouache, designers used to use these for coloring illustrations or posters. The look of this paint is really beautiful, it's really matte, so when you would use acrylics it would be really glossy, whereas the gouache is really beautiful, a matte paint. You can use it really opaque, so the colors are very intense. But when you would scan or photograph these, there would not be any eerie gloss. So that is the reason why designers used to love this. I know many illustrators still use this gouache a lot. Illustrators gouache would maybe be a more appropriate name. But well, illustrators are designers too, aren't they? It's not difficult to use gouache, but it has a few differences with acrylic paint or watercolors, and I would like to talk about that in this video. I have also recorded making this funny angry girl. Apparently she is angry with all the happy colors, which is a bit of a joke of me because I sometimes have the urge to use really dark and deep colors, and sometimes I'm using very bright and happy colors, and this was a bit of a joke because obviously I'm now in the mood for happy colors and this girl does not agree with it, so it's just a little joke of me. But I filmed this fun doll as well, but I will post this in another video because some people just like to watch me paint something and others are more interested in the actual art supplies. I've put my gouaches in this watercolor set because you can use them over and over again just like watercolors, but it's easier to use them while they're still wet, I must say this, but this is just a little palette that I will be using more often in the future, and I thought it was convenient to put my gouache here in this watercolor tin so that I can easily bring it with me, especially downstairs. I'm working on the second floor, and often when my kids are at home they are downstairs in the living room, and I just like to take a little set like this with me and create stuff like this in a small journal. First I want to talk about one difficulty of using gouache. What I find difficult in using it is, I will put a bit of paint there on my palette, that you have to dilute it with water. You cannot use it pure like that. Comparing it with, for example, acrylics that you would rather use pure, but gouache you have to dilute with water. So if I would use it with a bit of water, I would get an opaque color layer like this, but if I would use it pure without water, it is really sticky, and this would not even dry that well. It would become a bit glossy and sticky, and you can just not use a gouache like this. You have to dilute it with a bit of water, and if you do add water to this, you see how beautiful and pure the color is. There's just a lot of pigment in these gouache paints. You cannot compare this with a cheap poster paint that is used in schools, because it's a cheaper paint and there is less pigment in them. So if you want to start playing with gouache, you will have to look out for a brand that has a professional gouache, or designer's gouache is what they would call it, or artist's gouache maybe. But you have to look for a good quality brand. I myself often use these Winsor & Newton designer gouaches because that is what is available here in the Netherlands. Another important difference when you compare it with acrylics is that when you use acrylics are not water soluble anymore once dry. The gouache keeps on reacting to water, so if you would make it wet, you would be able to dilute it again. So that is the reason why I can put it on my palette and then keep on using this, because every time when I would make my paint wet again, it would react on the water again. So is this the same as watercolors? No. I have my watercolor set here. These are also from Winsor & Newton. When you look at it like this on video, you hardly see any difference. It's a bit of a difficult color, but it's the one color that I am sure of that it's the same pigment. So it's the exact same pigment, but the way the paint is made is different. It's more the recipe of the paint that is different. The watercolors are created to have a beautiful flow when you use water. So it's much easier to come from a pure yellow pigment to beautiful diluted white color, because this is developed to use with lots of water. The plakkaatverf or poster paint, the gouache, is created especially to make areas in one opaque color. So if I would, for example, want to well draw or let's say a square, really interesting. If I would want to make a square, to get it beautiful opaque with watercolors is a bit harder, but with gouache it's really easy to make a beautiful opaque colored layer. So if you're someone who really likes colors, gouache is very fun to play with. You can easily combine the two. A brand like, for example, Winsor & Newton has the same, they will use the same pigments for the paint. So the brilliant red violet in gouache is probably the exact pigment that they will use in the brilliant red violet watercolor. To me, a big difference comparing gouache with watercolors is the usage of white paint. In gouache you can easily mix your paint with a bit of white and you get these beautiful opaque pastel colored colors. And this is something that you would just not do with watercolors, because you would dilute the paint with water until you get the right color, and you use the whiteness of your paper to make the colors softer. But with gouache you can very well use the opaque white, mix it with any color you like, and then get these beautiful pastel colors. I mean, look at this combination of the lilac with this very vibrant yellow. This is just already such a fun combination to see those opaque colors together. And the good thing is that if I would take photos of this, or if I had to scan this, you would not get any eerie reflection that I would sometimes get when using good quality acrylic brands. When you use, for example, folk art acrylics, those are more matte and they don't shine. But it is, I think, because there is some kind of chalky binder added to it. So there is a lot of white in those kind of opaque matte acrylic paints. And the only difference between the folk art brand and those type of gouaches, I think, is that the folk art paint is waterproof once dry and these gouaches are not. Another nice thing about gouache is because it still reacts to water once dry, is that you can easily blend it. So now I've added a layer of lilac, and if I would dry it like this, it would just stay like this. If I would like a more of a gradient, I can just keep on playing a bit here, and then you would get a nice more gradient look. So if I would now dry it like this, you would get something like this. It's a bit too wet now, but you can of course just take some water off. Something like this. So it's very easy to add fun details with your gouache. I could, for example, draw tiny little dots, and then it would just stay an opaque lilac dot on my vibrant pink layer. But if I would just start rubbing a bit, you would get a lilac-y gradient in that pink paint. So it's very easy to play with the gouache like that. And that is really something that you cannot do with acrylic paints, because once dry you cannot really change it. You have to add another layer. That is sometimes also very convenient. If you're a beginner, it's really nice that you can just start covering, you can keep on covering layers. But the fun thing about gouache is that you can actually correct things by adding a bit of paint, and that is also something that you don't usually do with watercolors, because you have to layer transparent layers, while with gouache you can really play with the fact that it is really opaque. This is something that I was working on a few days ago, and this is created on a very good quality watercolor paper, and I used different gouaches. And then, for example, here this is something that you can also do with gouache, is more the watercolor look. So you have a really thin layer of diluted blue gouache that I diluted with lots of water. So that really gives a watercolor look. But then this color is really nice opaque. And this is something that I really find typical for gouache as well. You see here that I have covered a bit of the red. I've covered the blue with a bit of the red paint, and you see that you will get this funny shady look here because it is opaque but not 100% opaque, and then you get these really nice shading things. And here you see that I've covered the orange leaves with a bit of red, and here is orange on the yellow leaves. And you can really build opaque layers of color, while you also can blend colors if you would want that. I did that here on the dress of the doll. You see that there is a bit of difference in the color of the lilac, so you can blend that really nicely with gouache. I will also be posting how I made this doll, but I won't talk in that video. So all the information that you had to know about gouache is in this video, and then knowing all that, you can start coloring a page like this. In this doll I have only used that cadmium yellow, a brilliant red violet, Winsor violet and white. So the lilac and the pink I've created by adding a bit of white to this violet and the red violet and the Windsor violet, so then you get those colors. For the rest it's actually only those three colors plus white. I've added a bit of accents with a white acrylic marker. That is something that I really love. The only thing is that because the paint keeps on reacting to water, especially on, for example, the yellow, you will have to clean your pen tip when you use it on the gouache, because sometimes there will get a bit of paint to your tip, and then instead of white you will have a yellow or a pink tip, and you don't want that. That's it for today. I hope you liked it, and happy art journaling. Bye! Thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more art journal videos, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel and like this video. Thank you. Bye!